Well, overseas arrivals will be slashed from some 6,000 to 3,000 a week from July 14. That's under the roadmap agreed to by National Cabinet. Joining me live is Flight Centre CEO Graham Turner. Graham, thanks for your time today. There's already fears for those stranded Aussies overseas that airline services will be slashed in response to this. This is only inevitable, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would imagine so. It's a nightmare for these airlines because, you've got 300, most of the planes coming in that'll be affected are generally about 350 seat capacity. And, this means perhaps 25 to 30 people on each flight. So although they do carry freight, the economics of this are obviously disastrous. And so it's very hard to see exactly what's going to happen as to whether they'll just, slash the flights. So Australia will have very few airlines flying in and out, or whether they take the pain. It's a very tough position for them to be in.
Now, you've been critical of Australia's strategy here, particularly when it comes to these restrictions. Does this four-phase plan give you any confidence of a way out?
Look, at least it's a plan. It's, the so-called pathway to some sort of freedom for Australia. But it's very obscure exactly what it means. For example, the second stage is about, protecting hospitalisations and deaths to a large extent. Now, really, we should be in that now because everyone over 70, all the vulnerable people, anyone who's got underlying illnesses should already be vaccinated. They've had 5 months to do that. But there's still some people who aren't in that category. So really, we should be in the middle of stage 2, but there's no indication that the government thinks we are, or that. And, it's very, as I say, it's very obscure as to what they really mean.
So do you think they've actually got it wrong then?
Yeah, look, I think we should be opening the borders, not only for our sakes, but for people's sake, for business' sake, for people who have relatives overseas who haven't seen, close relatives, they haven't seen for a long time. When people aren't going to go to a hospital, when people aren't going to die from it, and that's when the key people, the older people and the people with underlying illnesses are vaccinated. And that should already be the case. There's probably still some to go, and that should be their major strategy, to vaccinate those. If the UK is a really good example, very few hospitalisations and deaths now, but they've still got 25, 30,000 infections a day. But because these vulnerable people have been vaccinated, it's not resulting in those hospitalisations or deaths like it was, 6 months ago.
So you still think that we could actually open international borders in, say, a month or so?
Look, I think there's still maybe, it'll depend on the destination. Whether they've got some sort of things under control. I think our strategy should be more about suppression, which it officially is, rather than elimination, which is what it actually is. I would say within the next 2 or 3 months, most major destinations where they have a reasonably high level of vaccination should be open to vaccinated travellers. And I think they will be. It'll probably be a bit slower than that.
Now, interestingly, one infectious diseases expert, Laura Jays, had on Sky earlier today, said she couldn't understand why vaccinated Australians aren't allowed to leave the country. We'd imagine the government would say that, well, there's not enough quarantine places for when they get back. But do you think anyone who is vaccinated should be allowed to freely leave, at least so as, I guess, to provide an extra incentive to go get the jab?
Look, I think whatever incentive there is, or disincentive not to, should be openly available. I mean, and it's pretty obvious that fully vaccinated people who test negative should be able to do some sort of shortened or home quarantine. Now, that is in the plan, but it's not at all obvious. They're talking about piloting some plans like that. But yeah, leaving and coming back, fully vaccinated, testing negative, it's a pretty obvious thing because I think everyone knows now that this virus is going to be around for a long time, many years. And what's going to change? It is one of the problems. The government's sort of almost looks like they're painting themselves into a corner with what might be unrealistic objectives. We can't eliminate the virus. It is around. It's going to become endemic. We've got to learn to live with it. And as soon as the vulnerable people are vaccinated, it seems pretty obvious to me and to a lot of other people, I think, that then we learn to live with it and accept that there are going to be infections.
Graham Turner, thanks for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much.